Hello and welcome to Diecast Restos. I'm Jason and I am moving up in scale this week with one of CORGI's Formula 1 offerings. This is a number 155 Lotus Climax and it was in production from December 1964 until 1969. They were always painted green and came with number 1 decals. This one is in patchy condition as you can see from its paintwork, and while it has retained 2 of its original tyres, they look like they're about ready to disintegrate. This is what the model was replicating, a Lotus 25 Formula 1 car. For this project, I needed some reproduction tyres all round, some replacement decals which include the iconic yellow stripe, and a new windscreen piece, seeing as the old one is broken. I removed the 2 rivet post burrs using a 5mm drill bit. This is a journey of discovery for me, since all CORGI models seem to be constructed differently depending on the number of parts and opening features they have. Nobody has restored one and posted video footage to YouTube, so I had no idea what to expect. What I found was a beautifully crafted rear suspension system that not only looks excellent, it functions perfectly too. The front was a little more akin to what I'm used to with my smaller scale works. As I pull this important piece out from the model, you can see how integral it is. It houses the rear axle, provides the front axle its suspension with moulded springs and a rollover hoop. In the cockpit sits the driver, who has fared remarkably well over the last 60 or so years. A touch of paint to his head helmet and he'll be raring to go. I eventually free up the windscreen, which was tightly secured to the casting. Not much broken there, but it's worth replacing. The steering wheel and mirrors are one moulded plastic piece, which again has managed to survive all these years. The rear rivet post forms part of the cast metal Coventry Climax V8, yet another interesting and innovative piece of manufacture by Metoy. And these are all of the parts laid out, ready for the restoration work to commence. The Lotus 25 the model is based on was the brainchild of Lotus founder Colin Chapman. Original sketches of the car were drawn up on napkins while Chapman was out to dinner with Mike Costin, who I spoke about in last week's Marcos video. Costin had designed the Lotus Mark 8 to 11 and Lotus 16 bodies. The 25's design was revolutionary. It was the first to use a fully stressed monocoque chassis in Formula 1. This chassis made the car more rigid and structurally stronger than typical F1 cars of the period. It was actually 3 times stiffer than its predecessor, the 24. The chassis weighed half as much. It was low and narrow with the driver reclined behind the steering wheel, leading to its early nickname, the bathtub. The 25 was powered by a Coventry Climax FWMV V8, which was 1496cc in capacity and naturally aspirated. Lotus had previously sold chassis to customer teams, but reserved the use of the 25 for works drivers Jim Clark and Trevor Taylor for 1962. It made its World Championship debut at that year's Dutch Grand Prix. On inspecting the car at the event, John Cooper asked Chapman where he had put the frame tubes in the car. Clark could muster only 9th in that race, but in its 3rd race, it gave him his first World Championship victory at Spa. Clark took wins in Britain and at Watkins Glen, which put him in contention for the driver's title. While leading the final round in South Africa, the car suffered an engine seizure, which cost him the title to Graham Hill. Clark took his revenge in 1963, winning his first World Championship with 7 race victories, and earned Lotus their first Constructors' Championship in the process. The 25 was again used in 1964, earning Clark a further 3 victories, including the British Grand Prix at Brands Hatch. Footage of this can be seen in the video outro. With the number 1 on the side of his car, this is what the Corgi model replicates. Despite these victories, Lotus had begun to introduce the new 33, initially to limited success. At the final race in Mexico, just as in 1962, the Climax engine developed an oil leak with a lap left to run. Clark coasted to a halt as his chances of a World Championship title passed him by into the hands of John Surtees in his Ferrari. The 25 continued to be used sporadically by Lotus through the 1965 season. It took its final win at the hands of Clark in that year's French Grand Prix. 25s were used in the Formula 1 World Championship as late as the Dutch Grand Prix in 1967 by customer team Reg Parnell Racing. In total, 7 Lotus 25 cars were built. Between 1962 and 1966, 4 were written off, 3 by Trevor Taylor alone. Chassis R4 was the one used by Clark in all 7 of his 1963 victories. This car was later crashed by Richard Atwood before it was rebuilt as a Lotus 33 using a spare monocoque of that type. The Corgi model outlasted the real car by a couple of years. By this point though, the model was looking quite outdated compared to contemporary Formula 1 racers. Aerodynamics were now coming into play, replacing the more traditional power and lightness attitudes of old. While rudimentary, these wings transformed the look of the cars, quickly making the Corgi look a bit old hat. So Metoy decided to modify the number 155 Lotus in 1969 to have winglets on the nose and a new tall rear wing above the engine. This new number 158 model also had steering, new wheels and a new orange and white livery, loosely reflecting the gold leaf colours of the Lotus 49. The decals were number 8s with a black stripe on a white background. For some reason, cost saving I suspect, the driver colours were inverted so he now had a blue body and face and a white helmet. It was far from Corgi's best effort. This abomination lasted until 1973, by which time F1 Aero had already moved on significantly. But we'll forget the number 158 ever happened as we turn our attention back to the original 155 Lotus. I'm using Tamiya's racing green to replicate the colour of the Lotus. It's quite bright after its first coat, but after another it tends to darken a bit. With these Tamiya paints of darker shades, I usually only need 2 coats. One is the initial and 2 fills any areas that I've missed. Now, using a combination of chonky 3mm and accurate 1mm Molotov pens, I lash on chrome paint to all of the plastic parts in order to renew them. The only area of the cast body that received any extra trim was silver to the engine and gearbox opening at the rear. While I am using a chrome pen to achieve this, it will be dulled down to silver after a clear coat. Clear coats tend to take away any reflective sheen of chrome paints, but that is the desired effect for me on this occasion. It does look good though, completely filled out. Now I lay on that clear coat to the body and base. It's time to apply the decals sourced from Steve Flowers Model Supplies. This is where the reproduction windscreen and tyres were also purchased. I apply the clear coat ahead of decal application for these decal sets, as I've had instances on several sets in the past where the clear lacquer has caused them to crack when set. I'm having a bit of a hard time getting these ones to stay put, but eventually I can squeeze out the excess moisture before applying Mr. Mark Softer solution. If you have any questions about the model, restoration work in general, or about any of my processes, leave me a comment. I read all of them and I will get back to you as soon as I can. So here are all of the parts that will once again make up this Lotus 25. In a different order to how I took it apart, I first pop in the steering wheel and mirror piece and follow that up with the transparency. I reinsert the exhaust pipes, which clip over a little nodule inside the casting. Next, I drop in the engine casting before reintroducing the rear assembly. Once that's in, I put the front axle into its slot, nice and springy. Then I reintroduce the driver. Finally, I grab the base piece and reintroduce it to the body. It's secured with a pair of 3mm M2 laptop screws. Oh, and let's not forget the 4 new tyres to finish the job. This was how my number 155 Lotus Climax Formula 1 car by Corgi was looking. 2 of the tyres were missing, while the other 2 needed replacing, having dried out long ago. The paint was quite flaky, with the decals having faded away. Each of the plastics had lost portions of their chromework, while a portion of the windscreen had also broken off. The best part was the driver, who was in remarkably good nick aside from a slightly scuffed helmet. And here it all is, factory fresh once more. The coat of Tamiya Racing Green stands out, giving the model a lovely glossy finish. The decals are great quality and are very accurate to the original designs. I quite like how bright the chromework has come out looking, particularly on the wheels. But it has also made a great deal of difference to the rear suspension assembly and to the mirrors. I polished up the V8, which turns out is integral to the structure of the entire model. And the driver is looking right at home again in the cockpit, having had a bath and a fresh new lid. I'll be bringing you another Corgi Formula 1 restoration next week, so leave a like if you're looking forward to seeing that. Let me know your thoughts on this resto down in the comments, and if you want to see more builds like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But all that leaves me to say is thanks for watching, and I'll see you again for the next one. Bye for now.
Record time to practice has once again seen Jim Clark and the Lotus snatch pole position with 1 minute 38.1. It's Jim Clark leading from Gurney, Graham Hill, Surtees, Brabham and McLaren 6th. And Jim Clark wins the Irish Grand Prix and the Grand Prix of Europe.